On September 16, 2022, 22-year-old Mahsa Jina Amini died while in custody of the government's morality police for wearing improper hijab. This sent shockwaves throughout Iran. A massive protest movement commenced in response as Iranians demanded justice for Amini and equal rights for women. My name is Sydney Martin, and I'm the program manager and a researcher here at the Iran 1400 Project. I recently conducted interviews with a variety of scholars about the woman life freedom movement. Here's what they had to say.
I think it's a really interestingly framed question, because I think you would expect with this kind of social movement that we'd be focusing on positives in terms of change, but there have also been significant negatives too, I think. And I suppose the positives are so strong that I'd like to give more time to them. So I'll get the negatives out of the way with first, I suppose. But I think one of the things we've noticed, I've looked a lot at social media dynamics and things like that, is a lot of outside actors trying to co-opt the women's movement for their own ends. So nefarious actors, really, people who are Islamophobic as well in many cases, and seeing, oh, okay, this is an anti-hijab movement, which of course is not what it is. It's the right to choose, right? So I think that's a negative that not many people have picked up on, but it's one that's prescient in my mind. Obviously, there've been a lot of arrests and a lot of deaths and a lot of killing, and that's the primary negative. But in terms of positive change, I mean, I've not seen something like this take hold in such a profound way across the world in terms of the Middle East movement on social media and other places. I think in the first couple of months, in the first month, I think by the end of October 2022, the Persian hashtag had 350 million tweets on it, which for context is, I think, 100 million more than the word Ukraine had in the first 6 months of that conflict. So it's had a huge international impact, and I think people are really mobilized and in tune with trying to bring change. There's been a lot of international conferences on it too. In terms of ideational or real, like imagined or real, I suppose, I think you've seen women protest in a profound. It's nothing new though. Women have been protesting in Iran since the revolution, right? But I suppose en masse, and young people too. And that's been huge. So to see young people mobilized against the Islamic Republic, that's been humongous. And I think with the median age about 31 years old in Iran, the tide is turning. And I think the scars are unhealable, but they're not going to produce the death of the regime anytime soon. I think the visible thing, obviously, is fewer women wearing hijab in Iran. But of course, the morality police are absolutely back in force at the moment, in various different incarnations and forms. They've tried to bring in measures to prevent shops from serving women without hijab, and banks, things like that. So it's a real battle, but I think there are observable changes in the scale of the reception of this thing, and the vocal support and the physical support of cross generations and cross genders. It's united the whole of not the whole of Iran, but a huge section, right? And the diaspora, and a humongous, because the Iranian diaspora is huge, right? Massive, and there's a lot of money there too, and so it's been warming to see that and hopeful. I was thinking about this question prior, and I think there's a few different ways of looking at it. There's something that was coming in even before Mahsa Amini was murdered, which was this bill that aimed to outlaw VPNs, which are these, if people don't know, they're these sort of networks that Iranian people use to get onto things like Twitter and Facebook and other social media platforms. So there's been a concerted effort even before then to crack down on social media use and internet use, and this pushing of the national information network. Some fairly lazy people have called it almost Sharia internet, which is a simplification, right? But it's basically an Iranian controlled thing, Iranian state controlled thing. So there's that. And I think young people are more tech savvy than the Islamic Republic in some ways, so they found their ways around it, and they continue to. And there's, TikTok seems to be easier to get onto, and that's been a platform that they've used to great effect, I think. I mean, the biggest problem and obstacles they faced is the scale of violence against them, which has been really significant. We're talking hundreds of people killed, thousands arrested, tens of thousands, but it's been amazing from the beginning. I've been observing this to see how it's only emboldened young people, young women more. It's changed the nature of protests in various ways. So they have different layers and types. So there's in person, there's things like just shouting in the back garden almost. There's online stuff, and so they think it's almost like as they go on, they're pragmatically working out different ways to keep the message alive. And so I think they've responded in a very strong and effective way. I think the other thing is a huge obstacle that people have faced is forced statements and confessions. So after some of the young women have been killed, I'm thinking of Nika Shakarami here, who was 16. Her aunt and uncle were forced to confess that she was in the wrong and the police didn't do anything. So that's a huge obstacle. The impossibility of justice through the courts. The courts are almost controlled by the IRGC in many respects. So I think focusing on international condemnation and scaling up that pressure is something that's been a way around it. But it's also, sanctions, for example, are affecting Iranian people as well as the government. So it's a difficult one. But I think the biggest problem is the quashing of information and data. Like, no one can get access to good data and information, but there are really brave dissident groups inside trying to collect that stuff, and the UN have conducted some efforts, but how successful they are remains to be seen. I'm going to take you through my thought process here. And the first thing when you say that is there's only one way, and that's the fall of the regime, because fundamentally the regime is not going to moderate. It seems that any moderate figures and voices, or on the more moderate end, so the Rouhanis, have been suppressed, and so now we're hardline. It seems to have been the case not only in Middle Eastern states but in other places around the world, right? But I think in the short term, my answer to these things is often to do with stronger local grassroots organizations and organizing where you can, women's groups as well. But I think as well, the complete abolition of the morality police would be, there was talk of that happening, but I think that was just a pure piece of propaganda from the Iranian state, sort of throwing a bone to the international community and the protesters, right? But a referendum maybe to make some change, to get some form of democracy working. And I think more than anything, providing women and LGBTQI people with their right to bodily autonomy, their right to freedom of expression, to education, to integration, raise the age of marriage. At the moment I think it's 13, and fathers can apply for it to be younger, in cases when they deem they want their daughters to be married sooner than 13. That needs to change. That might sound Eurocentric, but I think in terms of women's bodily autonomy, the fact that a father can request their daughter to be married under the age of 13, I think you'll be hard pressed to find women who could agree with that, Western or otherwise, really. And I also think one of the things that's been missed a little bit by international commentators is that this is it's a women's movement in one sense, but it's also a cross population movement, and also it's one for minority rights, right? Mahsa Amini was Kurdish, and so there needs to be more done for minority rights and acknowledgement of Kurdish identity, in whatever form that might be. I'm not going to go too far on that one because it's not my area, but I think those would be the key areas in which society could be transformed in the short term. In the long term, frankly, Khomeini's quite old now. So when he dies, which won't be too long, that could be the chance to strike, because I don't think they have any idea who could succeed him right now.